All right, now, if you normally tune the piano using an electronic tuning device, and you aren't completely confident with your aural skills in tuning the outer octaves, the general advice is to go ahead and do what you usually do. Program your electronic tuner the way that you normally do, and tune the piano the way that you normally do. Because even if you have not passed part 1, you can still pass part 2 and 3, and then go back and have another chance to pass part 1 again. I think the rules are now that you've got 2 chances to do that, and 2 years to get that done before you've got to start the process all over again. So that's pretty fair. And it's not that uncommon for first-time examinees to not quite pass part 1, but part 2 and 3 are just fine. All they need to do is work on their aural skills in the middle of the piano a little bit and go back and pass part 1, and they'll be done with it. So having said that, then if you're going to tune the outer octaves aurally, then you're going to approach things the same way that I have the rest of the piano. You need to get everything's going to be all out of tune, alternately sharp and flat. So I tuned now down to C3. A lot of the pianos that you would find in the exam room will be like a Yamaha C3, and the lowest note in the tenor will be this B2. And so you'll want to tune that. And then I really recommend going up before you go down. A lot of people who use electronic tuner like to start on the lowest note in the piano and do. To me, that's just not what I would do. But if you do that normally, then go ahead and do that. But tuning aurally, I would fill out the bottom of the tenor, whatever that is. And you can hear that's a terrible sounding octave. Octave. Now, the detuning specifications are larger in the outer octaves than they are in the central octave. We don't tell what those are. Just know that it's out of tune. All right, so. Oh, I have not put in the mute here because I left that open for doing E6, so I don't know if you can see me putting in the mute, and you haven't seen it done before. You'll see me doing it now. I just use this one Japanese screwdriver that I have, but you can use any other kind of tool that's similar to do it with. And just listening for what sounds like a pure octave. All right, for the exam purposes, octaves 3 and 4 are considered mid-range, temperament and mid-range, and the 5th and 6th octaves are considered the treble, and then the 7th octave is high treble. And in my normal practice, I always tune all the way up first, and then I do the bass. But for the exam, I'm going to recommend that you leave the high treble for last, because it is actually the easiest part of the exam, and it's a really good idea with any difficult test to get the hardest parts done first, and the easiest, most forgiving parts of the exam, leave that for last, okay? So now you want to go down to the wound strings or the bass. So I already did a few notes in what's considered the bass, but they're in this piano because of its configuration. It is there are a few bass notes in the low tenor. So let's see here. Again, you know, we have a just beating octave. Now, if you have the piano strip muted this way, and you tune in whole steps, the tuning pins are going to be all in a straight line. So that's the way that I do it. You can do it chromatically if you want, but see, and these are flat, so they're all going to be flat too. See, and the further that we get from the center of the piano, the more it's out of tune. So those were the bichords there. We'll go back into the others, the other notes. These are all going to be sharp. So now I'm down to the lowest single strings. You just want to take what don't want to sound like that. You want it to be as wide of an octave as it can be without having this growling or beating sound. You don't want it narrow. You don't want it to sound like that. The 3 lowest notes on the piano are not tested, so you don't have to worry about those. Now, so what I have done so far will take you from completely failing to within the high passing range, if not maybe even 100% on all this, because the tolerance is quite a bit less in the outer octaves. If you tune electronically, a lot of people that tune electronically get hundreds on all of the outer octaves. So you just, if you're tuning aurally though, you want to go back and give everything a test blow. I call that playing chopsticks. All right, now you want to go back and just really do more of the same. Octave, octave, 4th and 5th. Again, you're getting that same basic sound in all 3 intervals. The octave is on the wide side, but not beating. The 5th is a little bit narrow. Now that 4th is too wide. But as you're getting up this high, the 4ths are starting to be a little faster. And once you get to F5, you don't really need to worry about the 4ths anymore. See, now here down below in the low tenor here, I like to get the plain wire done first before the wound. So there's a few notes down here in the low tenor. We'll just check rapidly beating intervals here. And generally, if your octave 4th and 5th, if your temperament's good, your octave 4th and 5th sound good, your rapidly beating intervals are just going to fall right into place, as they did. So now up here in the treble, we can check with tenths at first. That sounded a little fast. right, all those sound real good. Now, once you get to F5, there's a way of tuning the higher octaves that I've done for a very long time that works really beautifully well. And it's so easy that people have dubbed it mindless octaves. Now, you need to get the octaves close first, as I showed you. But then what you do is you go, and you're using the sostenuto pedal. You compare the double octave to the octave fifth. So it's the fourth up from the lower note, or people say that it sounds like a European siren. And what you want, again, is this same sound from both intervals. But if you measure them electronically, you would find out that the double octave is still just slightly wide, and the octave fifth is just slightly narrow. But they both sound apparently in tune. Any musician would take them that way. See, now my double octave sounds fine, but the octave fifth does not, and that's boom, that wakes you up. And so that's what's mindless about it. It just doesn't require a lot of thinking. That narrowed octave in fifth is not going to sound good to a musician. The double octaves sound fine, but not that octave fifth. See, they sound pure. So there's a lot of talk about pure twelfths right now, and sometimes I wonder, is this really what they're doing? I'm not sure. That narrowed octave fifth, you can hear it right away. It just sounds flat. Of course, if you have it wide, your double octave is going to be terribly wide. See, now there's a double octave. You might miss it if that's all you listen to, but ooh, you sure would hear that. All right, now we're running close on time. But anyway, this part of the piano ought to sound really good with rapidly beating intervals. 17ths. All right, this would all pass with flying colors. There wouldn't be any points off or anything in that. Now the bass is the mirror image. So I'm not going to take the time right now to do all the bass because we are running out of time. But basically you want to, with the bichords here, you want to do now, once you get down to about F2, you're not going to need to listen to fourths anymore because they're just going to be too growly. Octave in fifth. Now you can mute. You can do so you have a little bit narrow of an octave. And so on. You can do mirror image. When you get to the very lowest notes, best way is to open it all up with your damper pedal. So you don't want that. A lot of technicians are afraid to tune the lowest notes flat enough. Sometimes they're not afraid to tune the highest notes sharp enough. But if you get the bottom way down there where it belongs, it gives the piano a bigger sound. You can but with the right tuning, you can make a smaller grand like this sound like a larger one. Now the last octave is really the easiest thing. So you're just looking for the purest sound. this note has kind of a false beat to it. So that's a little difficult. But in the treble section, you only have 12 notes, and there's a large tolerance. So you can really have some points off and still pass that. It's actually pretty rare. I have seen it happen that someone failed just on the treble section alone. But now the test for this is a 17th. I'm really not sure about that one. But as a matter of fact, when I passed my exams, that's where I got my points off, was in the high treble. So I'll admit that I'm not that good. I do something else in real life. I'm getting a nice, even purring sound from all of that. So I probably wouldn't get any points off on that. So now I am done. And so we have maybe 10 minutes for questions, and then we'll have to close.
Do we have anybody who wants, I'm looking at stuff, we've gotten some things going through. To be candid, I would probably I'm going to take you off of my speaker view and put you on gallery view and just ask people to raise their hand if they have a question, and I'm going to cycle between the screens, or put your hand up in the participant. If you'll put your hand up in the participant, you'll come to the top of the screen and I can call on you. You know how to do that, folks? Jesse Reyes. Okay, if you'll unmute yourself, Jesse.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hear you just fine.
I feel like, I'm getting a feedback. Okay, I hear a lot of people talk about how the beat speed of F3 and A3 that you said at the beginning,
yes,
and the size of the octave being dependent on the scaling. But I'm a little bit confused about how you're getting information about the scaling up front.
Oh, well, that's just by long-term experience. The Yamaha has this very moderate scale. It's neither high in harmonicity or low. It's a grand piano, so it's very well done. All the Asian pianos have been worked over for decades about refinement to get it as perfect as possible. So usually the Piano Technicians Guild will use a Kawai or Yamaha piano for the exams. But I've done it locally in Madison on a Steinway. And most technicians say that a Steinway is more difficult to tune than a Yamaha or Kawai. And I would kind of agree, but I've had enough experience that I can handle either one. It's just part of what I know how to do. I accept them both. But this, I think the point is that you find this. You don't tell it, it tells you. I had a little more trouble finding it today than I usually do, but that happens. And with this piano, this particular piano, I've had a little bit of trouble with the stability. In other words, that I put something where, and then a couple of minutes later, it wasn't where I put it. So there is something to be said about setting the pin. That's a term that I never heard really until about 10 years ago. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, but what it meant, what it really means is that you do what you have to do to make the strings stay where you put it. You know what? We didn't do unisons. This, you don't count it. You can't count it. You estimate it. And then you tune the other notes, and if the pattern doesn't work out, then you readjust until it does. And it took me a few times to get that just right. And I think a couple of things moved on me a little bit that kind of fooled me. But you're looking for this slower, faster. And if you're not getting that, if that isn't what you're hearing, then it's not right. Okay, and it can fit the picture and still be just a tiny bit off, but if it is, it's still, and you're not going to get everything else to work out perfectly, but you can probably still get everything within passing range, as we say. Now, I should do this real quick about the unisons. They pulled these muting strips out, and that's what you're going to hear. So you go through here, and I would recommend you want to hear a beatless sound. That's good enough. That's terrible. Okay. So you go through the entire mid-range, getting the bad ones first. I did the left strings, then you go through and you do the right strings, then give them all a good wrap. Because also in part 3 is your stability test. And what they will test the stability of is no longer the middle string as they used to. They will test your unisons. So you will want to go through. You get a half an hour to do it. So your first few minutes go through and just get rid of the worst ones. Get everything sounding a little better. And if you do that first, you'll probably be in passing range. And then you go through again and looking for the tiniest beat in there and making sure that when you give it a test blow that stays there and doesn't move on you like that. And then you'll pass your stability test as well. So that there's only 4 more minutes left. Is there any other questions? I hear dead silence. Kendall? Yep. What's up?
Michelle, where'd you go?
I hear Bill.
Okay. Lost Michelle. Anybody else got a question? Okay, we've got Joshua Martell. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Does anyone ever take the test using double string unisons? Is that allowed? Is that possible?
I don't even know what that is.
I think I can answer that. If you're asking whether you can set your mid-range using double spring unisons, the answer is no, because the examiners mute the piano and you only tune one string. So you can't use a double string test to get your pitch set. The unison section is after you've done
he's talking about
else.
What one particular person teaches, and I'm really not familiar with that. But that's what I showed you in the very beginning, is that your piano will be muted this way. And this practice started way back in the late 1970s. And they took it from some other people that were using muting strips across the entire piano at that time, and that was their method of tuning. And I saw that for the first time in 1979. And I tried it, and it helped me a lot because I was very much struggling with piano tuning at the time. So
Okay.
the use of muting strips helped me. But the exam is done that way, and you cannot change that, and you cannot disturb the mutes in the piano. When you're done with part 2, they take those mutes out, and they don't let you touch them. They take them out, and then they let you tune the unisons. One thing you don't have to worry about in part 3, the unison test, is if you pound on a unison and you're pounding the whole unison a little bit flat, you don't have to worry about that. It's not the real world, but they can't, on the exam, they can't account for everything in the real world. What these various parts of the exam do is they measure specific skills, and that's the way they have it separated out.
Okay,
So-
we've got 2 more questions and 1 minute to do it. So
All right.
Ryan was next. Go ahead, Ryan Smith. Unmute yourself.
Hi. Going back to the beginning of when we're using E6 to
Yes.
hear the beat
Yes.
rate at the A4, are we listening for that beat between the piano and the fork? Are we
Between
listening
the
for that
piano and
four
the
beat?
electronic tone. The fork doesn't
Okay,
have a
between-
third partial. The electronic tone does. The fork has a second partial with no inharmonicity, and that I do have to apologize. You know, I'm always a little flustered at first, so at first with this. But when you use the test note F2, you're going to hear 2 different sets of audible coincident partials. And that's why that note isn't as good as the note B2. What you are listening for, the answer for it, you're not listening for harmonics or anything, you're listening for a beat. And the beat occurs between the higher harmonics or partials, yes. But you're not listening for that specific partial, you're listening for the beat.
So the answer to your question was a fork will not give you that beat because it doesn't have a third partial. You have to use an electronic tone source to get that
Okay.
E6 beat.
Yeah.
when
And
you're-
it's
when you're
to
tuning
your
it.
advantage, and it's the modern way to do it. If you practice it, you'll be able to set your pitch.
1 more question, and that is Robert Cope. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Robert, and you'll get the last question.
Hi, thank you. I just wondered, for new tuners, typically at what point do you see people attempt the exams? How long have they been tuning?
That's a very good question because you hear different answers. You'll hear people say, "Oh, you got to do 1,000 pianos before you better attempt the exam." And I don't think that applies to everyone, because this pitch technique I learned from my apprentice who lives near here, who was 17 years old. He was an ace, and by the time that he took his exam, he was 10 days past his 18th birthday, and he had tuned maybe about 50 pianos, but he was just really good at what he did and very focused. So he did it. And I've heard other people like students of Jim Coleman Sr., that did the entire thing in 4 months, became an RPT and all that. But those are exceptions. What you need to do is find somebody in your area who is an RPT and is familiar with the exam and all that, who can listen to your piano and say, "I don't think you're quite ready yet. This is too rough," or "That's really, you're getting there. Just you need a little more practice," or "That's really good. I think you're ready." So that's what you need to do is keep practicing, but then find somebody that can give you that is able to give you an accurate opinion about it.
I think I'm going to emphasize what Bill said there that you may have let slip by. Find an RPT that's familiar with the exam process. because that's key. Because there's more to the, that's an important aspect. What Bill has done today has been an exceptional demonstration of what goes through, what you will go through, and understand that the exam process itself going through this is about 4 hours. So, I mean, there's a lot involved with it, and with the testing and everything, and breaking it down into the parts. And so it's tiring. And you need to, and you can understand what's in the exam. There's resources there on the PTG website, which will tell you what the steps are and what you can expect in the exam. And we'll be glad to get you that information. But the main thing is to be familiar with it and find someone that knows that process. And then, as Bill said, go and tune a piano for someone, and maybe even if they're familiar enough with the process, just have them do that. And then, most important, time yourself, because time allotment is where most people who have not taken the exam, who struggle, and that first time out is where it gets them in trouble. And I think Bill emphasized this as well. Time allotment on the exam. If you don't plan ahead and you run into and spend all your time on the easy parts and then get to the hard parts, you're going to struggle.
Yeah,
Thank you.
if you're lucky too, you can find someone who will give you what they call a mock exam. There'll be a master tuning set up to compare your results to, but it won't be official, but at least to give you an indication of whether you're within the range of where you could successfully attempt the exam. The examiners want to see everybody that comes through their pass. Unfortunately, they don't, it's not easy. So it's still about half the people that attempt it the first time are not successful, but among those, a lot of times it's a matter of part one, the hardest part of it. And the most, where the tolerances are the highest and all that. You could even say that tuning the initial A pitch, that's the hardest thing in the whole exam. But
Right.
I've given you this trick. And some people say it's even cheating, but it can't be cheating if you're doing it by ear. So there is a way to do that. And I've also shown you that the traditional way with the tuning fork and the test note that they show you, if you do it every day, you might be good at it, and I don't do it every day, so I'm not good at it. But there is this other way of doing it where you can just nail it right there.
Bill gave us there where about half of the people who take the tuning exam fail it on their first attempt. And that's a scary statistic, but I will, from the number of exams that I have assisted with, I will tell you that of those half that don't pass the first time, probably 2/3 of those individuals have not taken the mock exam, have not worked with anybody, and have just come in without looking at the requirements and just say, well, I'm going to take the exam because I can do this. And it's really important to understand what the exam entails. And if you do that and know what you're going to encounter when you get there, then that success rate for those people who pass that first time, that's what they have done. So that's what I would encourage you to do, to make your attempt at the first time successful. That's what we want. Mm. Okay, well, we have gone over, and I do apologize for that, but I want to thank Bill and I want to thank Kendall for their for making this all possible. We had a good turnout tonight. We have and I look forward to the edited video. Folks were asking about that. This was streamed to YouTube, so I know there'll be something there. There will be an edited video that Kendall is working on, and then there'll also be something up on the PTG website after we get all of the bugs worked out. Don't don't look for that anytime in the next 2 days or so. It will take longer than that to get it up. Other than that, I wish everybody to stay healthy, get vaccinated when you can, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Dave Carpenter will be doing a demonstration of the Verituner, and then the following week, Rick Butler and Maggie Giselle will be coming back with another demonstration of oral techniques and working with the tuning. As you may have recognized, the month of January and February, I am focusing on tuning and those skills. So I hope to see many of you again, and let's get these skills nailed down and working from that. And I hope you all have appreciated this evening. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it very much.
You're
Everybody
welcome. I just would say that PTG wants an hour-long presentation as an alternative to the convention next summer. And I'm thinking that the part one of the tuning exam, the one that most people are the most concerned about, I think that will work there. So it can be an edited version of this and for part one.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much for everybody's attention and all that. I really appreciate it. I hope that I've helped you.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.